for joining us. Room for Thought is Synergy's podcast that dives into the evolving world of the service accommodation industry, as well as business travel and mobility, featuring industry leaders and real-world stories, as well as fresh insights that shape the future. Synergy is a global leader in serviced accommodations, providing fully furnished apartments and end-to-end housing solutions for the tailored corporate traveler, relocation, or mobility person in need. Today's topic for our podcast is how technology is reshaping business travel through the eyes of two industry leaders who share experience in both being buyers as well as technology innovators. So today, joining us, we have Jennifer Steinke, a trailblazer in corporate travel with over 38 years of experience, currently leading travel, meetings, and fleet at Moderna. In addition, we also welcome Greg Wilczek, a CEO and co-founder of Empath Travel and Expense, whose 3-decade journey in business travel includes leading global programs at Google and now pioneering solutions for non-profile travelers. All right. Thank you both and welcome. Let's get started. So people who have responsibility over travel ultimately have a lot of other responsibilities in today's world. And you both see firsthand every day what that looks like for meetings and mobility, project, and even candidate work. What examples of this can you share with us from your experiences? Jennifer, how about you would like to start us off?
So first of all, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's an interesting topic because we absolutely wear multiple hats. And so some days I might be focused on meetings and some days I might have a heavy candidate load, or maybe it's just regular business travel. But I wish I had the luxury of just doing one thing really long. That is not what happens. And I think where we become challenged in that area is really around building out the strategy, where it's not just one category that the strategy is that you have to build out. And that strategies include, just overall how you're going to manage the business, that piece of business. It could be mobility, it could be your candidate travel, it could be just your regular transient travel or meetings. But, how do you align your technologies and all of those things that potentially need to integrate with one another? And I think that's where, as buyers, we have to really be really keen on what's happening in the marketplace and how we can adapt those technologies and how can they interact with each other. Because we're still managing one program, right? It's just multiple aspects of that program.
I agree. And we, in the work that we're doing, we talk to many travel managers a week, and we've got a kind of a rare view into lots of different managed travel programs. And it's interesting how, first of all, no two teams are alike. It's interesting how some of the largest programs are managed by the smallest teams, and some of the mid-sized programs are managed by very large teams. It's also interesting when we ask buyers what they're responsible for. It seems no two buyers have the same remit. Some are just focused purely on travel. Someone else in their company does payments and expenses. Some do end-to-end. It's travel, payments, and expenses. Others have meetings and events tacked on as well. And I think, for suppliers, the one thing you really want to understand before you start pitching and selling to buyers is to really understand what your prospect or your customer, what department they sit in. So if they're in procurement, it's going to be a savings lens. If they sit in corporate services, it might be more of a user experience lens. And then to also find out what their overall remit is, because if it's a very broad remit, they're probably not going to be as deep in categories as they would like to be, frankly. And I've been in that position myself as a travel manager, where you oversee so many different categories, you can't quite get as deep as you'd like. Whereas in other organizations, the team might have very specialized expertise and responsibility. So one person's on lodging, one person's on TMC, and they're going to go much deeper. So I do think it's really good to understand what your buyer's setup is, what department they're in, and the overall remit before you start pitching and selling services.
Yeah, that's such great feedback and validates what I tell my team all the time, which is understanding how buyers are measured and the performance metrics that they're trying to uphold for their business in general and how important that is. And kind of on that same topic, thinking about the remit of buyers in your own roles, both currently or historically, how do some of these multifaceted responsibilities, how do they shape the strategy or the approach that you take to sourcing and managing travel programs?
So first of all, it It depends on what department the travel organization sits in. If they're in sourcing, they're probably doing the sourcing themselves. There are other models where the travel team is an internal customer to the actual sourcer. So it's good to understand that relationship on the buyer side, to understand who's driving the process forward. As well, what I have observed and what I've experienced in my own career as a travel manager for 20 years is oftentimes my leadership's priorities become my priorities. And so I could be managing a travel program at company ABC, and we've got a clear strategy, and we know what we're being measured on, and we know what success looks like. And then there could be a change of leadership above us, and a new strategy comes down. Same program, same users, same supplier set, but now we have to change our strategy to adapt to that leader's agenda or ways of working. And so, I guess the takeaway there, maybe for any sellers that are joining and tuning into the podcast today, is to really check in with your buyers as you're meeting with them and asking what's new in your organization. And again, on the buyer side, I can just say no 2 days were alike. Very dynamic. There's a lot of change. And I think coming out of COVID into this AI world that we're in, the only constant is going to be change and hyperactive change.
Yeah, I agree. I report into procurement and up to finance, right? But I think to echo what Greg was saying is understanding your company's business objectives and how they're going to align with your program objectives is extremely important. So you might be in a really hyper growth mode, right? And how are you going to adapt to that? You might be bringing new products to market. And what is that going to do to your program? You might be retracting a little bit due to market conditions, right? So I think everybody's in a different place, but if you are keenly a part of like what is happening in your business, that will help to drive that strategy. Now, you never know, something's going to come out of left wing somewhere and you're all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, how do we react to that, right? You're not expecting it. But I think if you're consistently adapting to your own business within your program, that makes it easier for you to pivot, when it is maybe on a dime and you'll be like, okay, we're ready for that. And I always encourage, my colleague and even people that might be new to, maybe a new buyer in the industry is you have to be prepared for the unasked questions. If you're not prepared for the unasked questions, that's when you get blindsided, right? So if you're thinking about your data or your technology or that strategy overall, like you might want to lean in a little deeper as saying, what if they ask me this? They haven't asked me yet, but what if they do? Am I prepared to give that piece of information or that data? So I'm always doing things maybe that might be outside of what I'm normally looking at based on my strategy today, but always thinking about what could happen tomorrow.
And that's a great segue into kind of our next question. So why do you feel like AI is important to travel buyers today? And where does it play a role in travel? Jennifer, I see your smile. Let's start with you.
Well, this is all I'm working on right now. This is my strategy, to be honest with you. Like we are way deep into AI at the organization and within the travel program. So I think my advice to buyers would be don't and embrace AI and think about what it can do for your travel program. We are building out an AI platform called Tammy, our travel meetings intelligence. It's going to have AI booking capabilities, lots of data, lots of information. We're going to contextualize and create personalized offerings at the booking level. And that's because we are just really an AI focused organization. Not all organizations are like that. So I would encourage buyers to find out where you are on the trajectory of AI in your organization, understand your data and your governance and privacy and all of those things. And then how can you adapt certain activities within your program, to embrace it? And that might be just writing an email that makes you sound smarter than the one you wrote before. You know what I mean? It could be that simple. It could be full data analytics. I use it to do all my analysis on my sourcing. So, there's a broad spectrum of what you can do with AI and different technologies. And I would encourage buyers to not be afraid, but embrace it because it is going to be your best friend. And you have to be thinking about the future travelers. I'm not building Tammy or AI focus for someone that's going to retire in a couple of years. I'm building it for all that next generation of travelers. And we have to move fast because they're going to move faster than we can.
Yeah, that's great. Greg, how about you?
Yeah, it's such a great question. There's a whole continuum of AI in travel. And I think at the most extreme end, you've got buyers who are embracing new ways of booking travel through AI-led chat tools and such. And that's great, but that does scare a fair number of buyers. I think there was a survey that was just published recently that said the opposite, that said like only 10% of travelers or buyers really trust AI. And so you have to really, really understand there's a whole continuum of acceptance of AI. We've actually talked to some travel managers overseeing very large programs who've said to us as we've been talking to them, hey, are you using AI in your platform? And of course we are. And they've said you have to turn it off. We cannot use any AI in travel. Now that's the complete opposite end of the spectrum. I think everybody else is somewhere in between. I think a great place to start is, it doesn't, if you embrace AI, it doesn't mean that it has to completely replace everything that you've put into your program. And so I think that, again, that most extreme case of using AI to book travel, to engage with your travelers, to take reservations, that can be scary because we all know that AI is not perfect. It's trust and verify, trust and verify. So I get the trepidation there, but there are a lot of things that you can do behind the scenes. I'm really excited, for example, about thinking around data analysis and reporting, where in the past, I would spend, hours and weekends combing through reports and doing pivots and sorting and filtering and then putting the numbers into spreadsheet and then into PowerPoint decks to meet with the CFO. Whereas that can probably be spun up in a few moments with smart AI. And that's really exciting. And that's trust and verify. You can do that in your own time. So you feel comfortable that what you're presenting is accurate. I think trust and verify is really important. And then the last thing I'll say about AI is we had speaking with a travel manager recently who said she was really struggling with the high number of unused non-refundable tickets she had in her program. And she was getting pressure from leadership to better manage that and minimize spoilage and put those tickets to good use. And she took it to her agency account manager and said, how can we better manage our unused tickets? And never got a response through email, and went back a couple of days later. And then a very canned, very on the surface response came back. She then went to either ChatGPT or Gemini and put the same prompt in there, and it spat out the most beautiful strategy that she literally could trust and verify, but use as her roadmap to better minimize spoilage and maximize reuse of tickets. So it's really interesting to see where it makes sense to use AI across the industry.
Yeah. Well, that's a great example. And I'm curious on that note too, has there been specific feedback from individual travelers or maybe traveler populations that you've taken and integrated into your program or your product development today? Either of you? Greg, is there some evidence you could share with us?
I'd say, the use case that I think most of everyone is really thinking about is providing information to travelers and replicating old chatbots and FAQs and parking lots of information on intranets and making that information more readily available to users through AI. Nobody wants to kind of sift through a 60-page PDF policy to figure out where the class of service is. It's on page 48, but you have to sift through and find it and read it. Whereas if you can just go into an AI tool that your company supports and make that query, get the answer immediately. I think that's super exciting. That's very low risk. I think that's very low risk. But Jennifer, I think you're doing a lot with Tammy on
Yeah.
that front. Be curious to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah. So that's exactly where Tammy started, right? Was all right, how do we get more information in the hands of our travelers to make it easier for them? Now we have a one-page policy, right? So we have a bigger policy, but we have a one-page policy. It's easy for people to find. But I find that people then don't know where to even go look for it. And because we're such an AI forward organization, the natural place was to put it in. And that's how the idea of Tammy got started. How could I create a more intelligent platform for travel where people can get the data that they want? I think policy is an easy use case, FAQs, things like that. That's really simple. What I think is really the next level of interesting in the stuff that we're doing is giving people better information about what they should be spending, right? So let's say people are going to go from Boston to Warsaw. I look at tickets that are over $6,000 and do some policy approval stuff. And sometimes I'll see tickets that are like $13,000, $14,000. And I'm like, yeah, no, it shouldn't cost that much, right? So I know the intelligence inside my head, right? I know, okay, that's wrong. But the travelers don't see that at the point of time when they're using the traditional online booking tools right now. So that's what it costs in this point of time. And if it's in policy, they believe that's good, right? but that might not be good. And that might not be good for your organization. So we're taking a lot of benchmarking data around, how much should things cost? Who are our preferred suppliers? What are those discounts? All of that. So then at the point of booking or just informational, they could go into Tammy and they'll be able to look it up. But at the point of sale, we're going to contextualize that and say, hey, this ticket shouldn't be $13,000. It's normally on average 8 or 6 or whatever the number is. Are you flexible on your dates? Let's look a little deeper into, where there might be some cost savings opportunities. So it's about making that offering more intelligent than probably it is now in that booking experience. But whether you're doing bookings or not, you can use AI to deliver that information to your travelers, right? So I think it can be really dynamic and I think insightful also.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, very cool. Very exciting too, I have to say. So if you think about the future, what do you think the traveler experience looks like? And what are you most excited about when you think about the future relative to that?
Personalization. It's going to be all about the experience. It's going to be how do you, and we're doing some work obviously on this area, is how do you create that policy of one, that offering that truly is the best offer for that trip for that traveler. I think that's the number one thing because they know what is best for them, right? So technology needs to help support that. Obviously, it's going to be driven a lot by AI. So I think that creating a really personalized in-policy offer is going to be the future, is what we're going to see.
I agree. Personalization. I think when you look at the evolution of travel, Jennifer and I have been at this for a couple of years. When we go back to our formative years in the industry, it was very much people-based and service-based. It was almost like a pre-tech world. I mean, we had the GDS and other tech, but travel is largely booked over the phone when I started the industry. Then it started to move a little bit into email. But nonetheless, everyone had really personalized experiences. And especially if you had a good agent team supporting a corporate account, they started to build relationships with each other, and then the agent could anticipate the travelers. All of that went away when we introduced technology. We started introducing a lot of point and click technology 20, 25 years ago. And over the years, we kept beating up these tech providers. Like, we want this feature, we want this, we want this, we want this, because we wanted to replicate what we were getting out of live agents through tech. And it never really answered the call. Now we're kind of in this interesting world with AI. To Jennifer's point with personalization, I think finally AI can do what we wanted tech to do for the last 20 years, which is to automate the booking and not have people do rote tasks they don't need to do. Let's automate what we can automate, but then let's bring in that personalization. So when that guest comes into an online booking tool today and says, I want to go from A to B, they're basically seeing the same thing everyone else sees. There's nothing personalized in the results that come in. Whereas with AI, it can definitely personalize that experience. Say, I know that you like these suppliers. I know you won't fly this airline. I know this is your home airport. So I think this is exciting. We're finally taking the best of the servicing era with the tech era and building on top of that for a new generation of experience.
Agreed. To not agree more. And what a great way to kind of close us out on that high note. So we are so grateful for both of you and your time. This podcast means a lot to our organizations and obviously continues to educate listeners both on the buyer and the supplier side. And so before we head out, though, I'm going to ask you a few fun questions just to close us out. So totally travel related, but just all fun and games. If you get a middle seat on a flight, would you rather be stuck between 2 talkers or 2 sleepers? Jennifer, I'll start with you.
Sleepers.
Greg?
That's a great question. I've been in that position. I think, like most people, I have my extroverted days and my introverted days. I've got days when I want to get on that plane and put on the noise canceling and don't want to know that anyone around me exists. There are other times when maybe you're coming home from a conference and you're still kind of fueled on adrenaline and you're feeling very social and might welcome some chatter. The worst is when you're feeling introverted and the person next to you is extroverted. And you're like, read the body language. I'm not up for a conversation.
So true. Yeah. Okay, so when you're traveling, do you blend in a little leisure or do you go home and go straight back to work? How about you, Greg?
Depends where I'm going. If it's a city I've never been to before, sure, why not? A little leisure. Leisure can be just coming in the day before and having an afternoon in the city before the meeting starts the next day. If it's somewhere I've been or it's, in my opinion, a less exciting destination. It's straight in, straight out. I've become more straight in, straight out lately. When I was younger and getting into the industry, bleisure was a must-have.
Yeah, I'm the same. It depends. If it's a new city, I'll tack on some time. If it's not, I'm usually in and out. And honestly, sad to say, I don't have a lot of time to actually bleisure anything lately. So
Isn't that the truth?
it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I really want to go to that city and spend some extra time, but I'm like, oh, well, who's going to do all the work, right? So yeah,
That's right.
sad to say.
Oh, yeah, that's funny. All right, guys. Well, thank you again so much. It's been a pleasure, and we really appreciate your time, of course.